And I'm really excited to introduce our next speaker, who is Jeffrey Archer, somebody we all fondly know and follow and read. Jeffrey Archer has topped the bestseller list around the world with 275 million copies of his books sold in 97 countries and in more than 37 languages. He is the only author ever to have been a #1 bestseller in fiction, short stories, and nonfiction. Jeffrey is also an art collector and amateur auctioneer, conducting around 15 charity auctions a year and has raised over £51 million in the last 30 years for worthy causes. It's a pleasure to have you with us, Jeffrey.
Thank you very much indeed. And it's lovely to be back in India, so to speak, because I miss not being there for real and harassing you and chastising you, as I always do, about your useless cricket team and our wonderful English cricket team. When we you must know, when we meet next year, it will be a slaughter.
Fantastic. I can see this is going to be a very interesting session. Jeffrey will be in conversation with Nirmala Govindarajan, who is an author, journalist, and social sector documentarian. She endeavors to build an equitable world through her writing. Her new novel, Taboo, is inspired by underage girls who are kidnapped and trafficked and the book has been shortlisted for the Rabindranath Tagore Literary Prize 2020 and nominated for the Attagalata Bangalore Literature Festival Awards 2020. And with that, over to you, Nirmala.
Thanks, Mohan. Writing, reinventing, crafting the written word, Jeffrey Archer never fails to keep you on your toes, entertain you, and of course, surprise you with his dramatic plots and lifelike characters. The year 2019 saw the release of Archer's William Warwick series, beginning with Nothing Ventured. And the series actually gets you acquainted, the reader gets acquainted with a cop in this first book who is appointed to the London Metropolitan Police Force. Sooner than later, Constable William Warwick finds himself investigating the theft of a priceless Rembrandt masterpiece as a detective at Scotland Yard. What is endearing about William is that he is no superhero, but a young man who learns from his mistakes. Sir Archer, Lord Archer, do tell us about the inside story of creating the Warwick series and your dreams for the young detective.
Well, I wrote a series, Nirmala, called The Clifton Chronicles, and in it, my hero, Harry Clifton, himself a writer, wrote about his eponymous hero, William Warwick, who was a young man at school. And when he left school, he wanted to join the Metropolitan Police Force, much against the wisdom of his father, a distinguished barrister who wanted him to go to Oxford and read law. But the boy prevailed, and on leaving school, joined the Metropolitan Police Force, as you said, Nirmala, as a constable on the beat, soon to be promoted to a detective constable, where he would be in the art fraud squad, searching for a missing Rembrandt that had been stolen. So book one, Nothing Ventured, is about him as a young constable on the beat and then a young detective. And I wanted to write a series of books, each one of them a single book in its own right, where you followed his career from being a constable on the beat in book one, a detective sergeant in book two, which has just come out, Hidden in Plain Sight, which is in your bookshops now, which is where he does his second job, drugs. And he's looking for a drug lord on the south of the river who is running a vast empire that he must crack. Book three, which I'm working on in my study right here, he will be a detective inspector looking into police corruption. And so we're going to follow William, but I'm 80, so I have to make sure I live long enough for you to follow William. We have to follow William from being a constable in book 1, a sergeant in book 2, an inspector in book 3, a chief inspector in book 4 when he will do murder, because every book has a different subject and a different rank. And if Nirmala, I live long enough, he will become Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police. So you're going to follow him from constable all the way through to Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, with a different subject and a different rank in every book. But I repeat, Nirmala, I am not your age, so I have got to hope I will survive until at least 85, 86.
Oh, hopefully 200.
200!
Yes, we want to
That's
read
the
many more
score
books.
I'm going to get against India in the first test. That will be the score I get in Bangalore or Delhi or wherever the first test is. I will be there knocking your bowlers all round the field.
Lovely. Looking forward to that. Yeah. So what is most exciting about creating a new series? Could you talk about the art of staying young and alive as a writer?
Well, the public decided for me, in truth, Nirmala. After the Clifton Chronicles, a lot of people wrote to me and said, we like the sound of William Warwick and your hero, Harry Clifton, writing about him. Could you write about him? So in a way, it was the public who gave me the idea. And then I had the idea of taking him from constable all the way through commissioner in each separate book. That was the idea I had when I settled down to write the first book, Nothing Ventured. And when you come to talking about energy and youth, I don't know. I happen to believe that energy and youth, or whatever we want to call energy, is God-given. It's almost a gift. And I'm very, very lucky because I'm still enjoying immensely my writing. I write every single day. I wrote for a couple of hours before I came down to do this interview. I do it every day. I think if I get bored or I haven't got any ideas, I'll stop. But at the moment, I'm enjoying every moment of it. And William Warwick is taking up my life. So I think the answer to your question is, if you have something you want to do, Nirmala, something you're excited about, there's no reason why you can't go on and on. My wife, who set this machine up, because I handwrite, I don't know how to set up a machine. I'd be sitting here on my own if she wasn't around. My wife is chairman of the Science Museum of Great Britain, and she is 75 years old, and she doesn't stop working. So we're as bad as each other. So I would say to anyone out there, age is not important. Got it?
Lovely. In fact, Lord Archer's works get younger with the series for children. And there are 3 very exciting books that I read: By Royal Appointment, Willie Visits the Square World, and Willie and the Killer Kipper. And I loved these books. Not only, the tales are not just erudite and full of imagination, but they are packed with lessons like perseverance pays and how elders never listen. And of course, so when did you write these books, Jeffrey, and who were your first readers?
I'm glad you like them, Nirmala. Kind of you to say so, because you look a little older than 6 as I sit here looking at you. You may not be, you may be between 6 and 8, because the truth is, in answer to your question, that when Cain and Abel came out and went to the top of the bestsellers list right across the world, my 2 children, excuse me, I'm sorry, my 2 children were 6 and 8. And they kept saying, Daddy, everybody tells me that you're a writer. So I had to sit down and write these books for my children. They weren't meant to be published. I enjoyed writing them and they were fun. And then my publishers in India, bright, sparkling, innovative people as the Indians are, said, don't be silly, Geoffrey, we're going to publish them. So there they are, published with, if I may say so, the most remarkable illustrations done by two distinguished Indian ladies. I mean, the illustrations are fabulous. So when they sent me the book, I was very proud to have them published for young Indians, particularly because we in Britain are now very aware that what a good educational system you have, and how your young, how well educated your young are, and how they're quietly taking over countries all over the world while no one is looking, not least England, where we have an Indian Chancellor of the Exchequer. Heaven knows it won't be long before we just have, surely we, I hope we do, have an Indian Prime Minister. Whereas I think the chances of India having an English Prime Minister are pretty small.
Yes. Do you have the copies with you? Would you like to read an excerpt from one of the children's
Now you
books?
must speak into your microphone because I'm old and deaf, Nirmala. I don't have your advantages.
Jeffrey, would you have a copy?
Speak up.
Would you have copies of the book, children's books with you? Would you like to read an excerpt from any of them?
I'm very sorry. No, I don't. I do apologize. I do not. And my wife has deserted me to go back to her office and work. So I can't even go searching for them or looking for them in the hope, but they're certainly not here. I do apologize. I would love to have read from them, but no, they are not here, Nirmala. So move on to your next question or I'll get told off.
Yeah. So the series, these books are dedicated to your sons, William and James. Willie gets to have all the adventures while the younger one, James, remains at home. How does your son, James, feel about being left out of all the adventures?
Well, I think that the children enjoyed them immensely at the time. I mean, that's 40 years ago. They enjoyed them immensely at the time, and now just look upon them as part of their early life. And they were as surprised as I was that the Indians were so keen to publish them. And I'm, of course, delighted by that. And I'm delighted to hear that they're selling so well, because I'm not a children's writer. I'm a storyteller. And I've been writing books for the Indians for years. And they've been very generous in their response.
Do you plan to write more children's books?
No.
No. Okay. Why not?
Well, you seem to have missed it, Nirmala. You're either very slow or you're not concentrating. I am 80 and I've now got to write 8 books on William Warwick before I die. So I haven't time. If I had time, I would, but I don't. You're a lucky thing. You've got time. I haven't. Next question.
Okay. Okay. Looking back at your own life's adventures, what have been the most trying times as an author? Could you take us through your highs and lows and finding yourself through your writings, the earlier books and even now?
Do you mean in the books or in life generally?
In life generally, through your writing.
Well, I'm childishly proud of the fact that I ran for Great Britain.
Mm-hmm.
I was never a great runner. I tried very hard indeed when I was at Oxford. I had the privilege of being president of Oxford athletics team, and then went on to run for my country. So I'm immensely proud of that. I'm equally proud in a very different way of the charity auctions. I love being a charity auctioneer. And as you kindly pointed out, I have raised, it's nearly 60 million now for different charities. In fact, it's the one thing in COVID-19 that I have really missed. I haven't done a charity auction and stolen money from wicked people for a long time. And I do enjoy that. That's my hobby and I do enjoy it. So I'm very proud of that. But of course, in the end, being a storyteller and having sold 320 million books is, I suppose, what I'm most proud of. And in particular, Cain and Abel, because in your country, in India, the Times of India said they thought that probably 100 million people around the world had read Cain and Abel, but 50 million of them were in India.
Wow.
Mind you, while you scandalous lot sell my books on the streets for half the price, why should one be surprised? I was coming out of an airport the other day in no, it's a long time now, it's a year ago, in New Delhi, and a little boy came and tapped on my window, which is easy enough to do in India because the cars go slower than the walkers. So he tapped on my window and he said, and I wound down, and he was carrying a great pile of books. And he said, would you like the latest Jeffrey Archer? And I said, I am the latest Jeffrey Archer.
So readers in India obviously love you. And there's a passing mention of Bombay in your work, Nothing Ventured. And in fact, even Mr. Patil makes a brief appearance. So could you tell us about your connection with India and Indians through your writing, and also any connections that you've had in your personal life?
I always advise writers not to write too much about other countries unless they've lived in them for a very long time and can get into the skin of that country. I became very aware of this I'm very aware of this whenever I read Indian authors. I don't expect them to write about the British House of Commons. I don't expect them to write about the Metropolitan Police Force. I don't expect them to write about Impressionist art or any of the other things I've had a love affair with the whole of my life. So I'm very tentative and very circumspect about actually writing about India, even though I love it to bits, because I'm frightened of getting it badly wrong and then saying that's not good enough, Jeffrey, particularly as you have so many great authors in your country. And may I at this point, Nirmala, congratulate you on being put up for a major prize.
Thank you.
That means I have to dismiss you now out of hand as useless and pathetic, because that means you're a writer, Nirmala. You're not a storyteller. You writers keep getting prizes. We storytellers get nothing except readers.
Yes, and millions. Yeah. So you've often said that R.K. Narayan is your favorite writer. I've read it in several places. So what about his writing appeals to you?
Well, you know very well indeed, young lady, because I know you're a highly intelligent person, and I know highly intelligent people are watching this program. So it's a question to which you already know the answer. He has that amazing, R.K. Narayan has that amazing gift of being a great writer and a great storyteller, but a real gift, Nirmala, and we can both learn from it. He has the ability to write about something very simple and make you want to turn the page. Magaldi Days is a masterpiece. And when he writes about a tax inspector living in a small village, boring, boring, but he makes it so exciting. And he makes you want to turn the page to find out what happened to this pathetic little family and this pathetic little man. That's genius. When you can take something that simple and cling you in and make you turn the page, that's genius. No, I'm a huge admirer of R.K. Narayan, and I agree with the great Graham Greene that he should have been awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature.
Are there any other authors from India that you read?
Well, you have so many, frankly. You've had so many Nobel Prize winners, and you've had so many top classy writers. But the reason I always pick R.K. Narayan to beat the lot of them is because many years ago I was in what I think of as Bangalore. I suppose I think of it as Bangalore. I was in the Taj Hotel, and I was sitting with the literary editor of the Times of India. So I thought, you better be careful here, Jeffrey. watch yourself, only use big words. And she said, Geoffrey, I love your books, which was very kind of her, because the literary editors can be very snooty, and she wasn't. She said, I love your books, Geoffrey. And she said to me, I always say to people like that, who should I be reading? This is many years ago. Who should I be reading? And she said, Geoffrey, you should be reading Arcane Orion. And she delivered a sentence I will never forget the rest of my life, Nirmala. She said, Nirmala, she said, forget the sacred cows of Indian literature and read Arcane Orion. That's how she summed it up, and I couldn't sum it up better.
So you're known to spend dedicated hours writing every day. Do you know where your plot is going, or does it flow as you go along?
I think I'm a genuine storyteller in that way. I haven't got a blooming clue. I get up in the morning and pray. I pick up the pen and it luckily moves across the paper page every single day. I mean, I know in the sense that William Warwick is going to be a detective constable in this book, and it's going to be art fraud. I know in the second book, he's going to be a sergeant and it's going to be drugs. But no is the answer to your question. I get up each morning and pray. You see, you and I, if I dare to join your distinguished group, because I've never won a prize like you, you and I, you know, we're simple people, but you are not, and I am not a ballet dancer. We are not violin players. We are not opening the batting for India. We are writers and storytellers. And you will know, I think it's a God-given gift. I think I just got very lucky. I like telling stories. It never crossed my mind that millions of people would want to read them. I genuinely didn't cross my mind until a massive breakthrough in Cain and Abel, when it sold 1 million books in the first week. That changed my whole life. So I look back on it now at the age of 80, and I think, one, you've been very lucky, Geoffrey, very lucky indeed. You've kept your health, you've kept your energy, and you're still writing. But God gave you this simple gift. In fact, I had an Indian lady about your age come to see me when I was in Chennai, and she came in the room to interview me, and she locked the door, which quite worried me. And she came up and she said, I want you to tell me the secret, Geoffrey. And I said, oh, what secret's that? She said, I want you to tell me the secret of where you get your stories. So I said, no, it's a God-given gift. I'm very, very lucky. No, she said, I won't tell anyone if you tell me. It'll be a secret between you and me. No, I said, I get up each morning, the pen, no, she said, I won't tell anyone, I promise. So I said, well, I live in Cambridge, in England, and at the bottom of the garden, there's a river, and above the river, there's a river bank. And every morning at 6 o'clock, I take a shovel down to the river, and I dig a hole, and I look in the hole, and there the stories are.
Oh.
She went out of the room very cross with me, and she hasn't spoken to me since. But you and I know it's a God-given gift.
Lovely. Your writing is intense with dialogue and interaction, which makes it very amenable to be adapted to the screen. Is this a conscious effort? They could be so, all your works could easily be made into films. I feel it has that kind of a flavor. So do you think it's a conscious effort?
To make them turn the pages?
Yeah. Not turn the pages, also to be made into films. There's so much dialogue.
Well, I think storytellers are narrative driven, Nirmala. I think great writers will give you pages of my sweater and my top and my hair and the lines on my forehead, so that everybody's got me on the page, but it's taken me 4 pages to get onto that page. No, I think I'm narrative driven. And I like you to come into the story. And I think in a way it's a strength, in a way it's a weakness, because sometimes I feel there should be more description in my books, but I like them to move at a great pace. So I would say storytellers are narrative driven, and writers have this amazing ability to, I mean, look at you sitting there with your Bangalore Literature Festival sign, which looks like a couple of swans, heaven knows what it is. And there's you in the middle with your black top and your red dress or skirt, whatever it's called. And I can't see what's on your legs. They look like long black and white stockings. There they are. And you're wearing gym shoes, or at least what I called when I was a child, gym shoes. They've probably got some snooty Nike flashy Indian sign on them to prove you're very special. And then on your right, you've got this glass of water in the table. And below that, you've got those funny colors all behind you. We haven't got on with the story at all, Nirmala. All we've done is place you. I like to get on with the story. I want to know more about you, not about your glass of water on the table.
Lovely. So, Jeffrey, what are you most conscious of as a writer during these trying times? And is there a message you'd like to share with your readers?
Well, that's a very fair question, because frankly, I was locked down for 144 days in Cambridge. I have a lovely home in Cambridge. And I'm lucky to adore my wife, and we've been married for 54 years. So that was wonderful too. But I have a friend who owns a small restaurant in London, and he's lost everything in a year. I have a friend who's one of the most successful cruise liner chiefs, and his whole empire has collapsed in the last year. I have a friend who runs conferences. Nobody wants a conference this year, so he's nearly bankrupt. Whereas during that 144 days, I wrote the third of the William Warwick book. So I am very aware how lucky I've been, how privileged I've been, and how unfortunate some of my dearest friends have been. And looking at your country, and indeed at ours, indeed across the world, I feel very sorry for young people. I mean, if at the moment you're 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, you're just leaving school and going to university in what should be the most exciting and formative days of your life. And you're locked into a room and you can't go out and have a drink and kick each other and laugh at the silly old grown-ups. I think it's very sad. And I was saying to Mary at breakfast this morning, you know, that the problem Britain will be facing over the next 10 years, and indeed the problems India will be facing, created by this evil COVID, will not affect greatly the people of my age. It'll be your generation and younger who will be really badly affected by it. So I feel for them. I feel that's a bit rough. I was born at the end of the Second World War. I don't remember it, of course. I was born in 1940. I don't remember. I remember soldiers with one arm and one leg. I remember the country being destitute and fighting back. Of course I do. But I was young, so I didn't give a damn. I just got on with it. So I've been very lucky in the sense there's been no war in my lifetime. And there's been nothing to stop me advancing, progressing, and doing my thing. So for this terrible disease to come when I'm 80 years old, I can almost look at it reflectively and from a view of other people. And so it saddens me for those people who need other human beings to make their jobs work. It saddens me for young people who are not having a lot of fun and making fools of themselves. I think it's sad. And I, therefore, again, as I said about the writing, consider myself very lucky, because the 80 years in which I've lived, we've not seen this terrible COVID. The brilliant Mr. Gates worked it out, or at least his advisors and academic people surrounding him. I commend to any of you watching this that Mr. Gates did a lecture, or I'm guessing 6-7 years ago, when he said all this was going to happen. His people worked it out. And we've got to pray we get on top of it with the vaccine. We've started taking the vaccine in Britain. Over 80s, people working in care homes, people working in the front line are already having it. So the quicker you can get the vaccine, can I say to people very seriously, because my wife is a distinguished scientist, and so I listen to her very carefully indeed. You've got to take the vaccine if you get the chance. For heaven's sake, don't be silly and say, I'm not sure how it works. I don't really think. Take it. Believe me, it will make life easier for everybody in the end.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And now I think people have questions for you. I think Mohan had some questions come in, and we could throw
Also,
the house open to the audience. Thank you.
We do have a few people in the audience who'd like to ask questions. So, ma'am, please. I'm going to request everyone to keep their questions short. Yeah, and we do have a couple of questions.
I'm delighted. Get on with it.
Yes, just getting started.
Dr. Jeffrey, you do thrill, but you have reduced me to tears also on your 1 AD. Would you say that in this season of Yuletide, we're like that little boy who just didn't know that a new savior would come? Would you say that in this year, in this millennium, we're also like that little boy and maybe in need of a new knowledge?
Well, can I say, oh, do keep facing me, please, so I can have a chat to you. Can I say, I wrote a piece, oh God, I wish I had it here now. If you'll be kind enough to let the organizers know who you are. I wrote a piece that I was inspired by when I went to a church service in England. And I would love to send it to you because it sums up exactly how I feel. So if the organizers would be kind enough to send me your name and address and how to get in touch with you, I'll send it to you immediately.
I'm Nishka Ratnam, and I'd be really, it has puzzled me all my life, and I'd be so grateful because your thrilling is one thing, but making me cry was something I just didn't expect. So thank you so much. I would love to receive that.
You're very kind, and you're typical, if I may say so, what inspires me. Whenever people write to me and hundreds of letters a week and contact the whole time, some people say, isn't that boring, Jeffrey? Don't you get fed up with people approaching? No, never. I am so flattered and touched that anybody reads me. So that when they get in touch and tell me how they feel about a particular book, I'm very touched, and thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Great. There are a couple of other questions that have come in. One is from Ganpati Murali. He asks, will in one of your future books, Commissioner of Police and Super Detective William find out the real truth of source of COVID virus? Is it man-made or not?
Oh, I am not a clever enough scientist to know the answer to that question, but there isn't much doubt that the killing of certain animals in China caused the original coronavirus, and the Chinese are to blame for this initially. There's not much doubt about that. And I was asked as a subsidiary to that question, if I may, if I were to write a book about COVID at the time of Donald Trump. I mean, what a combination that would be. But I pointed out very politely to them that the trouble is, but the day you published it, you'd be out of date 2 weeks later, because Donald Trump keeps saying things after I published the book, and COVID goes on relentlessly. So heaven knows where it's going to end. But I've watched it with great fascination as a writer, but will not attempt to actually do it. They asked me on television quite recently in England how I would have written it, and I would have written it the following way. I would have said, not necessarily the Chinese, a race decided the way to rule the world was to create a COVID and to distribute it around the rest of the world while isolating oneself and therefore wiping out the rest of the world for a complete year, maybe two, while they went on and conquered the world. And that was the only idea I came up with for a novel, which had I said that to you 2 years ago, young man, you would have said, that's a bit far-fetched, Geoffrey. But then if I'd said we'd have a president of the United States who, having lost by 7 million votes, said he was the winner, you'd have said that was a bit far-fetched as well.
Yeah, that's right. Our next question is from Madhavi Vivek. Hi, Geoffrey. You talk of getting on with the story, knowing more about you instead of the table or the glass of water next to you. What is your view of writers who talk about painting the picture? Do you think it matters in storytelling?
Well, it's very interesting you use the word storytelling. It's how you get the Nobel Prize if you can do that brilliantly, if you can describe something. But Nobel Prizes never seem to be won by someone who's telling a story. They seem to be won by people who have a marvelous command of language and a great ability to describe something brilliantly. And often the story is secondary. Well, I can't do anything about that. I am a storyteller and I can't change and become. I like to believe the writing, the reason the books have been so successful is because the writing is quite good, but it's the storytelling. So I will never win any prizes. I'm not like Nirmala. She's obviously going to win all the prizes and be very clever, and we're all going to be reading about her over the years, long after I've forgotten, and I shall go goodbye, Nirmala, because you're and quite right, Nirmala. Beat me into the ground.
Yes. Great. Yeah, we will take your question next if you could please come up. So the next question, Geoffrey, is Gotham wants to know if the 80-year-old Geoffrey is he a commercial entertainer, or does he want to bring change with his pen and make us think about our country and the world?
Well, I try not to pontificate. I try not to tell you what you should do. But I hope sometimes in my characters, you'll feel how I feel about certain things. All my life, I've fought for women's rights. And I thought your country, if I dare say it out loud, has been way behind on that particular subject. And let me remind you, Indians watching this, when I go to India and I speak at schools, it's the girls who are impressive. It's the girls who are years ahead of the boys. I've met some exceptional young women in India. When I was recently in Bangalore, I had two privileges that I won't forget. One was a young girl. She must have been 16, 17, and very intelligent conversation with her. And then I said, what are you going to do next, young lady? And she said, I'm going to Somerville College, Oxford. Well, that put me in my place straight away. And I thought, that's it. That's the next generation. I'm going to Somerville College, Oxford. I thought, well, that's you out of the way. And then I went to the Bangalore Museum in reference to this particular question. I went to Bangalore Museum because I love museums and I love art. And the lady showed me around. And usually I know in a couple of minutes if someone's read my books because they make some comment about one of the books or they ask a question or whatever. And off I go. And she didn't mention the books at all. She showed me the museum, the amazing pieces you have in that museum, and she was very proud of it and the different buildings. And then as she left, she said, I want to thank you very much indeed. And I said, oh, what for? She said, I read The Prodigal Daughter when I was a young girl, and it made me believe that a woman could do anything. There was no longer any reason to believe a woman couldn't do anything. I did point out to her as politely as I could that The Prodigal Daughter, the sequel to Cain and Abel, is the story of the first woman president of the United States. And I wrote that 40 years ago. What are these slow, slack, boring Americans up to? They could have had a decent woman president years ago. Wake up, America!
All right. Our next question is from a member of the audience. One second.
Hi, Geoffrey. let me just tell you, fell in love with literature from more, Not a Penny Less. That's where it began. And I'd like to tell you today, I'm an author with Pan Macmillan, and I got published this year. So
Start applauding, Nirmala.
Sorry? Thank you. I just want to ask you, what keeps you 80 years young and not become jaded and cynical?
That's a very kind question. And by the way, very good luck with your career, and how kind of you to mention my first book, Not a Penny More, Not a Penny Less. So I'll tell you a little secret so you don't get too pumped up with yourself, young lady. Listen carefully. My first book was turned down by 16 publishers. The 17th publisher published Not a Penny More, Not a Penny Less, and it only sold 3,000 copies. So keep going. The secret is to keep going. The breakthrough for me was my third book, Cain and Abel. So don't think you're going to be a world bestseller overnight. Work hard and keep going. Yes. But by the way, many congratulations, because to be honest, it's even harder to get published nowadays than it was in the past. And during this COVID year, it's harder still. So I say many congratulations and very good luck, but keep going. Now, you have, dare I say it, one is not allowed to make comments nowadays. I'm so old and boring. I'm not politically correct. You have a very intelligent face. You have the face of a highly educated woman. So I've got faith in you. So get on with it and report back when I'm 90.
Yes, sir. Please do read my book, Newborns and Newborns, sir. Newborns and New Moms, sir.
That's very kind. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, sir.
So Sharat Tanga asks, will you please take us through your writing routine and daily routine to keep your craft, energy and health going?
I rise at 5:30 in the morning. I start writing at 6 o'clock. I work between 6 and 8 for 2 hours. 2 hours is about the length of time I can absolutely 100% concentrate. I then take a 2-hour break and I work from 10 o'clock until 12. I then take a 2-hour break and I work from 2 o'clock until 4. I then take a 2-hour break and I work 6 o'clock until 8. During coronavirus lockdown, that changed because I was locked up for 146 days. So I was able to write a complete book. I handwrite every word. I'm incapable of using any machinery. I'm pathetic and out of date. So I can't use any machinery. Every word is handwritten. It's then given to my secretary, who types it up triple spaced. I then work on the typewritten page. And let me say to aspiring authors, I hand in to the publisher my 14th or 15th draft. Only morons and idiots hand in their first draft. I apologize. Only morons, idiots, and geniuses hand in their first draft. Not me. I have to keep going. Even at the age of 80, when I've been at it for 45, 50 years, I'm still doing 14 drafts. There's no shortcut. If there was, I'd have found it by now.
That's true. Our next question is from Utkarsh, and he asks, who are your favorite Indian and English cricketers of all time?
Of all time? Well, one or two of them are close and dear friends. I was up at Oxford with the Nawab Patodi, the late Nawab Patodi. What a great man. Batted when he went on batting for India, even though he lost his eye. And I've had the honor and privilege of knowing his wife and daughter. Indeed, I did an auction for his daughter. Sunil Gavaskar is a dear friend who I love and adore. And it's so kind of him to come on television in England and tell the British people that he thought I ought to be captain of the England cricket team. Particularly with the Indian tour just coming up, he felt I ought to be captain of England. I have friendships with VVS Laxman and with Raul Dravid and with Kumble. What a great captain Kumble was. When he was in India, wasn't he magnificent? And didn't Mr. Ponting, by his behavior, show just how magnificent Mr. Kumble was? What a fine man. VVS Laxman, you see, I'm a test cricketer, you see. You have to understand I'm the real thing. I'm not a 2020 man. I'm not a one-day man. I'm a test cricketer. So for me, the match India versus Australia, when VVS Laxman and Rahul Dravid remained at the crease all day, turned the match round when they were so far behind and defeated Australia, that's my idea of what a cricket match is. This whacking the ball around for 20 overs to a bunch of idiots watching is not me. I am a test man, and I should have captained England against India. It was just a pity I couldn't bat, bowl or field. But then relevance is the refuge of the inhibited.
Yeah, thank you for that answer. And I'll take one other question before handing it back to Nirmala to wrap up the question. I think we have one audience question. Just give us a minute, Jeffrey.
Get moving, you old thing. You should have been here half an hour ago, waiting, ready. You've kept us all waiting. Get on with it.
Yeah, my question is, do you ever experience the writer's block?
Good question.
And when you do, how do you handle it?
Well, I've been very lucky in the sense that I can honestly say to you, no, I've never experienced writer's block. Indeed, my home in Mallorca, where I normally write when this evil COVID isn't around, is called writer's block. It's the name of my house. But I tell you what I do think, and if you're a writer, and Nirmala will be able to tell you the same thing, it's not writer's block so much as you get to a point where you can't see a way out. You write something, you get yourself there, and you think, how am I going to get out of that? That has happened 2 or 3 times. I wrote a book many years called As the Crow Flies, and I knew the whole thing rested on the hero, Trumper, finding out a simple fact. And he knew there was a lady in Australia who knew the truth. So he flew to Australia to see the lady, and she's now in a nursing home, and he goes to see her, and he knows that if he tells her the truth, he'll be escaped, he'll be out. And he knocks on the door, and the matron comes to the door, and the matron says, I'm very sorry, she died 3 days ago.
Oh.
Ow, 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 ow. My great editor many years ago was a man called Corley Smith, who edited J.D. Salinger, a truly great editor. He said to me, Jeffrey, if you can make it possible to make it almost impossible to get out of a problem, the reader will love it. And the answer to your question, sir, is simple. It took me 3 days before I could find a solution to how he dealt with that. And I'm going to tell you how I did it. And it took 3 days of walking around a golf course day after day after day. The matron I turned into a Scottish lady. Concentrate. And I made her, the Scottish lady says, oh, are you going back to England? Yes, he says. Oh, would you be kind enough to post this letter in England? It'll save me however much. And he opens the letter in the plane on the way back. And the question he needed answering is answered. So your comment, no, I've never had writer's block as such, but I sometimes dig a hole so deep that it's pretty difficult to get out. But I say to any author watching or any aspiring author watching, go on digging the hole, because if you get out, the reader will love it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
All right. This has been great, Nirmala. Over to you to wrap it up.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jeffrey, for being with us here today. Awards don't matter. It matters to be Jeffrey Archer, and the most loved author in India and the world over. It is such an honor and privilege to be with you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much indeed. I have, as everyone knows, an immense affection for India, an immense love of your people who are so genuinely kind and generous every time I come. And I hope you'll be through this terrible COVID as soon as possible. And I can get back to coming to you and you can get back to coming to us. Because one of the joys of my life is having so many Indian friends. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And thank you, Nirmala. This was such a fantastic session. We really appreciate it. Thanks to you on behalf of the organizers of the Bangalore Literature Festival. This was truly a joy.